Welcome. Thanks for joining me, the Film3 OG. I'm Jordan Bain, and this is the next wave of cinema. It has been a minute since we met on LinkedIn, and now finally, between your incredibly busy schedule and my incredibly insane schedule, we have made this moment to take a deep dive into everything you've been doing across filmmaking and technology. And I'm super, super delighted to have you here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself, which is always more fun for me than me trying to cover someone who has done as much incredible stuff as you have.
That's nice of you to say. I am just so happy that our orbits have sort of finally collided in the cosmos that we can be sitting here. So thanks for having me, Jordan. And so for those who don't know me, my name is Taryn O'Neill. I have worn many hats in this crazy entertainment space. All the way from, I was first an assistant at William Morris on a lit desk. That was my first job out of college.
Wow.
At the William Morris agency, even before it was William Morris Endeavor. So that kind of speaks to how long I've been around.
Wow.
And then I've been an actor, performer. I was a performer all throughout my life as a kid. I was a figure skater. And then I did a lot of theater, musical theater when I was in high school and college. And I just always was a big storyteller, a big fan of storytelling and a big fan of sort of big existential questions, which actresses are often not encouraged to ask. And I sort of had thrown my heart and soul on the table so many times that I had it squashed as an actor. And I'm like, I need to have some like creative control in my life somehow. And I happened to cross paths with somebody who was entering this new realm of web series. And this was in like 2007. And so web series was like this brand new thing of like, consumer grade cameras that, could actually have film mounts for film lenses, and you could actually, capture, really beautiful photography at a lower cost point. And web series, video podcasts were just happening. So I happened just to cross paths with the right people at the right time. And I ended up producing this sci-fi apocalyptic web series that I starred in. And it brought me into this kind of community of super cool independent filmmakers. So it was kind of like the new indie film space of like what, Sex Lies and audio or videotapes had done back in the day for Sundance. And suddenly I was in this community of people who like to wear a lot of hats. And I loved this idea of like being an actress and a producer. And then I realized I had all these stories I want to tell. And this gave me permission to actually do that, similar to what I think, the AI space is doing today for people. And social media sort of unfolded there. And I'm like, wait, I can wear a marketing hat and maybe this helps distribution. And it just sort of, I'm a Gemini. And so like my brain goes in 50 million different directions. And so this just really fit well for me. And so at the same time as I was sort of making a living as an actor, primarily a commercial actor, but I did, a lot of then indie web series. I was in a ton of them and did some, regular TV and features. I was also developing my writing skills, and I just love science fiction. I love the future. I love big what if questions. And my brain just naturally sort of jumped to that. And in starting to write it, being the good student, science nerd, I'm like, I need to do science research to make sure that all this science fiction is like theoretically legitimate. And I came out the other side, this like science evangelist, where I'm like, the world is so cool. We have to understand it better to save it. And I actually hadn't studied a lot of science in high school or college because I'd been figure skating. And so I had like a really small amount of subjects I got to study, just like the core subjects, because I was like on a sports program. And so I just started doing deep dives into like genetics and physics and, and just trying to understand engineering and math. I was just, well, no, even though I'm an econ major. But I sort of had this feeling it was so important to understand science and technologies just from a general literacy perspective, because I saw all these like huge challenges coming over the horizon because my brain just sort of thinks about the future. And I saw, climate change coming, and this was in 2014, climate change and biotech and AI. And so I wrote this like big blog post, and like long story short, it sort of launched this STEM and climate advocacy group I started called Sirens. And then I basically kept building out my writing and directed a sci-fi short. That was my first directing gig. And out of that, I ended up booking two romantasy features, so book adaptations. So I got to like dip my toe into the fantasy romance world, which has the most incredible fandom and communities I've ever. I mean, it's not my general cup of tea, but the fantasy and the VFX that I had to do with it, and there was action and stunts, and I studied martial arts for 15 years. I did some of that as an actress. And so that was just all like amazing. And I got to make movies in this really abbreviated period of time because they were lean and mean productions. So I got all this experience, and but the first short film that I directed had a big AI component in it because I'd been tracking AI for what, not in a production sense, but in a story sense. And so when COVID was happening and I was directing the movies, but everything else was kind of put on hold, I started really doing this deep dive into like what is the emerging technologies that it's going to be impacting Hollywood, not just from a production and business standpoint, but what are the stories we're supposed to be telling? Because during COVID, I was like, where are stories to help us move into like more hopeful, inspirational futures? Everybody was just showing in Hollywood like climate gloom and doom and the apocalypse and dystopias. And I'm like, where's something else? Like, we need to start championing this. And that kind of laid the foundation for the work that I'm doing now, which is in protopias. So, not the perfect utopian future, which is impossible anyway, and just geared towards one group of people. Protopias are like hopeful futures where our world's incrementally better, where there's collective agency around, human action. It's not that, the machines and AI are doing everything and we're sitting in these couches like Wall-E and just sort of rolling around being like, isn't life great? No, we have agency. And there's an incredible community of writers and filmmakers that are looking to these new stories and even story structures to sort of bring these new stories to the public. And I really believe that AI tools can be a big help here because they enable you to envision futures that would be so cost prohibitive to make on any kind of an indie budget. And so I'm like, all these incredibly imaginative filmmakers, tell these new stories, show these new worlds, show what's possible. And so that's kind of where I'm at now and the projects that I'm undertaking and sort of the impact work that I'm doing. Just like you.
Woo! Let me try to unpack that. Did you see me go analog really quickly? I was like, oh my.
I was having an inner monologue in the moment of it. I was like, oh no, you're dropping down way too much. And I'm like, how do I get out of this? There's a
That's
lot that I left off.
the dilemma of being a woman and a multitasker, right?
Yes.
And honestly, I mean, I'm very excited to unpack all that. I tried to take as many notes as I could, but I think that that we have a lot of crossover here, aside from just being multi-hyphenates, and in our interests. But I have to go all the way back to web series for a second because it's ironic that probably yesterday, or the day before, I remembered when I was back in New York. It was probably 2000. I can't remember. 2007, 2009. No, 2000. I can't remember.
That
Uh,
era.
yeah, when then. This is a very Gen X thing that's happening these days. I get lost. No words. They just
Yep, me too.
fly. Whee! At the moment. So, and I remember I was like, wow, maybe I could do a web series about like, you know, queer women, LGBTQIA, and I took it to a friend of mine who was super smart, went to Brown, was in New York, kind of like figuring out her life. She had been one of the first babies from two moms, and one of them happened to be a
Cool.
producer. And so I took it to her, and I was like, "I'd love to talk to your mom about this and see if she thinks it's viable." And the response that I got back was, "Oh, that'll never go anywhere. Web series will never go anywhere." Um, and of course, I was at that time still impressionable enough to be like, well,
Oh,
that yeah,
okay.
oh yeah, okay, you're a professional.
Yeah.
You've made lots of films, and I've made none, or whatever, wherever I was at that point. And then Issa Rae, uh, and it all blew open. And so I think that's really amazing at that time that you were also there and experiencing that and doing that, because I feel like that so much of what we are capable of doing now, we can trace all the way back to that moment. Not just like getting our hands on, the Panasonic digital, and suddenly we have some agency in telling our stories because we're not bound to, film. Um,
Hmm.
but that we could go out and make these things. And I want to really kind of like trace all the way back there for a moment. Um, what did it feel like to you to be, because I think you had a lot of the same frustrations I had coming up as an actor, where, yes, we're not allowed to be, what was it? I was always supposed to be an ingenue. I'm like, I'm not an ingenue.
Right?
I know I am I'm like a thinking person in a 20-year-old's body right now. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I'm super heavy, my feet are on the ground and I want to talk to you about life. Um,
Right. No,
uh,
I know the gravitas.
the-
Like, why can't we have gravitas as a young? I think now you could, and now you can.
oh, you
It's such
see
a
it.
you totally, yeah, exactly, and especially in creators online, especially. Just before I answer your question, I just want to give a shout out. There was a beautiful web series, and I'm trying to remember both of the creators. I know Tina Sessa Ward, I think, was one of the directors, but it was called Anyone But You, and it was a queer web series that was so beautiful, and it was like the first queer web series that got a lot of notoriety, and it was shot in New York. So they were
Yep,
both New
I
York writer
remember it.
directors. Do you?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was such a
for
good one.
sure. Yeah.
For me, I think it may have just been that I was always given a lot of agency to be ambitious when I was young.
Hmm.
Like I was the expectations when I was young, I had a lot of heavy expectations of like be the top in school, be the best skater, like, and then when I wasn't sort of succeeding in the way that I thought I was going to succeed as an actor,
Oh.
and I saw this next, avenue where I'm like, oh, I can put my like business street smart and experience at William Morris, and I've been an intern at Gersh, and I done a semester at USC, and the film industry, it just sort of like it kind of made sense to me, even
Hmm.
though it doesn't make sense on a balance sheet. And so it's like when I have a project and I see its value and I can advocate for it. I think as a woman, I was always awful at advocating for myself. But if there was an actual project or a concept or somebody else that I could advocate for and like really push, I just went to town. And I had a great two other producers. One was the writer director, Mike Davies, and the other was Stephanie Thorpe, who was another sort of actress, producer, writer. And we just made it happen. And I think that there was something really generative and joyful about bringing a group of actors together who were all curious
Hmm.
of like, what is this new format? And nobody was afraid, not like what you see today in the AI communities of like trying to bring in, actors or more traditional film types into the creative space. But nobody, there wasn't this like anger or fear around it. It was like, oh, we can tell this story and maybe it's going to live on our computer screen and YouTube, but that player is really weird. I mean, we built our own player. This was before Vimeo.
That's
I mean,
so
it
cool.
was it was like us and we lost Best Like Web Series against Dr. Horrible's sing along blog. I mean, Joss Whedon. That's that was sort of the era of when we did this. And it was also this really exciting way of exploring big concepts, big sci-fi concepts in like limited budget contained spaces. So it's
Hmm.
like, how can we have this big concept, but then how can we tell the story with having a $16,000 budget
Mm-hmm.
for,
Yeah.
basically 16 episodes. And then we also did ancillary content. We had like handheld, really crappy, this is when wasn't even phones, good phones. I mean, just really
Yeah.
small consumer grade handheld things that we did like before. It was called After Judgment, but these were before Judgment, like when after the apocalypse had happened, these were the videos, like home videos of people. It was I'm trying to think if there was a sci-fi series that came out afterwards that was very similar.
Mm.
We're like, we wonder if they had watched ours, you know? But yeah, it was just, it just didn't see, I've always seen, I've never been afraid of change or uncertainty. And so when I see a path forward of utilizing both art and technology coming together, and I can see that road in front of me, others might not, I just jump on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's sort of, it wasn't even a question. I just kind of did it. And people were like, what are you doing? Just like when I first got on Twitter, I would have friends being like, what is this stupid thing you're on? And the people that I have met because of early days of Twitter across, especially across the science community and sci-fi, and,
The
it's just,
writers. I miss
yes,
them. I miss
life
the writing
changing.
community so much.
Me too.
Twitter writers
I
were
mean,
amazing.
Comic-Con. It was like basically Comic-Con on Twitter all day long.
It was, yeah,
It was
it
so
was
fun.
great. It was great.
Yep.
You know, I didn't even consider the word technology until 2020, 2021. So it's interesting that you embrace it so early. I mean, I was embracing it. I just wasn't naming it.
Yep.
You know, the Panasonic came out, I grabbed it, went and made a short film, figured that out. And honestly, we made that short film for like $2,000. And it did really well, around this was 2005, I think. And going back to the sort of gravitas of things, even that film was asking existential questions.
Mm.
It was called Argo. I got really fortunate that after seeing 500 actors for a free, that I found one who was willing to come in and audition. Found her through a friend, Jordana Spiro.
Yeah.
She was phenomenal. She was like, "No, I'll come audition for you." And I was like, "You don't have to." And she's like, "No, no, no, I will." And she came in and she just killed it. And she was such a delight to work with. But it was a completely existential film, and I could have only done it because that camera came out, and it kind of like broke open everything. And when I think about the web series that you're talking about and you embracing that and being a part of that flood of really indie film for many of us, um that we could not have done that. And I'm going to wrap all this up in our AI, journey right now. But I think that there's something happening also along the micro drama and vertical thing that is changing things up as well. And I'm a little less like inclined to watch vertical. Like I'm
Yeah.
really struggling. I mean, I want like real true cinema scope, but I understand that there's a changing audience, and also, as you know, I'm very much into sort of the whole fan participation thing, and I'm building something towards that. And so I feel like that going back to being women in an industry that has systemically and historically given us very few opportunities, rather than being the type of people, rather than being like, well, that's, you know, kind of the way it is, and I guess I'll go find something else. You have carved a path of like, no, I'm going to grab onto this new thing and see how far I can take it, and I feel like I'm the same way. It's like constantly looking for the opportunity and the new path and really just being out there and innovating. And not necessarily, I've always been a huge fan of Ava DuVernay,
Yeah.
and Alma Har'al, and Alma trying to like make a difference with Free the Bid and then Free the Work.
Yep.
Um,
Both of them. The collective community of artists they surround themselves with, and the activism, the impact work that they do. It's like
exactly.
central. They're both incredible filmmakers.
Yes.
And then they have this circle that sort of radiates out from them. They are
Yes.
not the lone male genius in, his office writing away and directing away, the auteur, they are, the center of a community, which
Yeah.
is really incredible.
Yes, agreed. And that's, what I was trying to build with the Film 3 brand as well. Starting in 2021, that same based on my inspiration from those two women. But really bringing this back to you and what inspires me about what I'm hearing from you is this constant embracing of I'm not this it's like this is my place. I belong in this world. I belong in this world as an artist, is what I'm getting from you. And as a storyteller, whether that makes me an actor or a writer or a director or a creative technologist, figuring this out. From what the story you said, from the web series into your interest in science fiction, into the existential questions, like this is your world. And so you're looking in the same way I am of ways that we can be self-sustaining in this world and make sure that your voice is being heard. Like, and I
Hmm.
love that, like you have Future Film Fridays.
Yeah,
Um
thanks.
Yes, because it's the same thing. Your voice. It's like, here's my voice every week. Now, here's a collection of things that I've noticed, but still, like you're out there, you're leading, and I think that um it takes an incredible amount of tenacity to, aside from talent, tenacity.
Thanks.
Yeah, to be doing that. So that brings me, I think, I'm sorry, I also have to touch on the romanticides that you were doing.
Yeah.
Again, opportunities that gave you like experience and information, right?
Yes. And the ability to work with talented actors and figure out how I could create something that may not be sort of my passion genre, but something that I'm still proud of and that is still like an expression of my artistry. One of the things I never wanted to direct. I never thought that I was going to direct. Basically, I interviewed a bunch of people to direct Live, which was the sci-fi short film. And I just had this vision for it, and everybody was bringing me sort of standard Blade Runner sci-fi like
Mm,
aesthetics, and I'm like, no, no one's seeing what I'm seeing. And I had this board I'd built out, and a good friend of mine, Mark Gant, who is huge in the web series space as well, and he's a feature director as well now, wears multiple hats, was an actor, still is sometimes. And he's like, "Why aren't you directing?"
mm,
And I was like, no, no,
mm,
no. I'm acting. I'm in every scene. Like this is an intense role. No way. He's like, if anyone can do it, you can do it. I was like, okay, thanks so much. That makes me feel nice. But and then I just had to at the end of the day because I lost my funding and I decided to fund it myself. And I just
oof.
inherited a bit of money from my grandmother passing, and I used it towards that. And I knew, and I literally wrote on my board, I'm like, this short film will change your life. And I just had it up on my whiteboard, and I just every time I was like wanted to just collapse on my desk, I would remind myself, A, you're making a film. How wonderful is that? And
Yeah,
B, that what's
yeah.
on the whiteboard.
Wow.
So, that was kind of like what got me into directing. But then once I was in it, I was like, oh, wait, I get to production design. I love designing. I love photography. I love designing, interior designing, like all that stuff, fashion. So picking wardrobe and color palettes. And then I got to edit. And having been a figure skater, my strength as a figure skater was choreography. So it
Mm,
was crafting programs to music. And that
mm,
is what big of what a director does in the edit is they create that rhythm, they create that emotional experience through the cuts. And so that just came like super naturally to me. And then I love music. And so like the scoring as well as like the sound design was like kid in a candy store for me. So I was like, huh, I guess I like all these parts.
Guess you're a
Didn't,
director.
I guess I am. The feature world, I realized that God, pre-production, that's a beast. There are
Mm,
so many problems that come and you're just like, I
mm,
know I will find my way and work my problem solve my way out of this. But wow, these are like big problems to address all the time. So that was certainly a learning experience. But yeah, making both of those movies, I literally felt like I could go direct a Michael Bay movie after that. I mean, making those movies at such a low budget with 300 VFX, shots in each of those movies and stunts and action and 20 locations and 30 cast members. This wasn't like, you know, Olivia Wilde's beautiful, The Invite where there's four actors, in a house.
oh,
This was like huge. It should have been a $30 million movie.
Wow.
And I'm so proud of what we did. And I feel like I could problem solve anything now.
Wow.
And as an actor, I love working with actors, and it's so amazing how. And the thing is not only do I love actors, I respect them. I respect
Mm,
the craft. I've
mm,
done it for so long. I studied it for so long, and never was, never had huge success. And so I was always so just continuing to push the work and push the exploration. And the lack of respect that actors get on set, and I've had that too, especially in commercial sets, is just it's staggering. I
mm,
mean, I've had actors who I always email my actors if they're coming on set the night before, saying, "I can't wait to see you on set. Your audition was amazing. You know, we'll talk." Blah blah blah. And I had actors being like, "I have never had a director in my 25 years as an actor email me before the shoot." And I was like,
mm.
"That's just kind of weird. Like we're about to like go into like vulnerable territory
Yeah.
and weird."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just another one of the other reasons why I love directing, because it's just being able to work and play with actors and inspire them and keep them safe, but then
Mm.
also keep a set running. I think it's just my multi-Gemini mind that can go from sort of one personality to the next to keep things going.
You're really speaking my language right now, as someone who started as an actor and then um wrote my first screenplays for myself and then realized I wanted to direct and I did not want to be in front and behind the camera. And then I ended up developing out of my method training, developing my own kind of as we all do process and sharing that process and teaching a workshop called the Permission Playground for about
Oh, I
five
like that.
years around the world until I stopped because I was in such demand and I wasn't being able to take care of my own artist while helping others take care of their own artist. But you said a lot of things that meant a lot to me as far as like the respect around the work as an actor. I think it is some of the bravest work I have ever encountered with any human being is the work that an actor does if they're really doing the work, if it's not about
Yeah.
their ego. And if they're literally taking their lived experience and allowing us the vulnerability to, or they're allowing us inside their vulnerability. I used to call it intimacy, but into me see.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
because
I might steal that.
yeah, that's all right. You
That's
can
great.
steal it. Um, I always felt like that if you were to get out of your own way, which is what the permission playground was about, give yourself permission to be
Yep.
who you were born to be and to feel what you feel and to do what you need to pursue what you want.
Yep.
Um, and in that moment, and if you were whether it's stage or film, but I typically am someone who loves film for what gets captured.
Me too.
Um,
Yep.
and that's really where like just get out of your way and allow us in. And I think that not everyone, because of their lived experiences, that comes easily to. So that's why we work on technique to like
Yep.
unblock those things. And that's basically all I taught for, in Madrid and Rome and Milan and New York,
Cool.
mostly. But I feel like one of the things that I have the joy, because I wrote a piece yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, about Rodin and that he did not carve the marble. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
no,
What?
he had an atelier of hands
Oh,
of people
I
that
would have, wow, but he wasn't actually in there. Passage d'Enfer is like one
yeah,
of
yeah,
my
yeah.
like
He was a part of the
favorite pieces.
process in that he would mold his idea and his vision in clay
Okay.
and then hand it off to other people to carve it out of the marble. And I've always been fascinated by that. That's where the whole Camille Claudel thing came because she was one of his assistants and then his
Mm,
lover, and then he discarded her. And she went nuts because
yeah.
what happens to women when they're not given the ability and the support to see their vision through. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
Now why did I bring that up?
The disposable muse.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, how many conversations are we going to end up having? Um,
On multiple timelines, I'm sure.
yes, exactly. One of the things I said in that article yesterday is with all of this FUD and all of this hatred and all the stuff that, is happening, I'm no longer interested in defending, what's going on. I have written many articles defending this as a technology and a tool. What I'm most interested in is elevating this as joyful um, tool that unlocks and democratizes stories for so many people. And not only that, the joy that I get as an actor of mocapping and
Mm,
performing under so many different characters in the work that I'm doing is it unlocks that that experience that I had as a younger person when I got to do those things, and they were so meaningful to tell that story on that level, not just
mm.
directing and put. I love the collaboration too, but really that experience and that process of trying to bring the story together to life from an emotional um
Embodied place.
yes, that can get expressed and then connected to the audience in the
Mhm.
end, if you follow my logic there.
I do. Yep. I've been thinking a lot about embodiment these days when it comes to art and how we're all sort of from here up right now. And I was just reading how World Labs acquired Cenex, which is a robotics company, so that they
Yes.
can, I think they announced it yesterday at SIGGRAPH, so, but that is the future. Whenever I'm explaining to somebody about world models versus language models or diffusion models, I'm like, models is what understands the space and place
Mm.
around us. And these are the models that will basically power, the massive robotics industry. And lo and behold, already it's happening of the acquisitions.
Oh man, it's kind of crazy. It's
So
kind of
yes, let's get ahead of it as people who can utilize these models to be able to become whatever your imagination puts forth, which is just allows us to play again. Michael Ronan, I don't know if you know him. He's sort of one of the filmmakers under the machine cinema cohort, and I'm working with them on a Protopian collaborative film workshop next weekend. And he has something about the play economy, which I just think is like we have to bring that back. 'Cause especially in technology, everything gets like coded ones and zeros. And I'm like, no, this is an opportunity to world build and feel that world because the only way we're going to build better future worlds is not just if we see them, but we have to experience them. My favorite
hmm
quote is from Otto Scharmer, who's an MIT researcher, and he created the Presencing Institute. And he writes, "The future arrives first as a feeling." And that is always, ever since I heard that, I was like, oh, yes, we have to sense it, we have to feel it, we have to touch it.
mm
So I think
hmm
that you're talking about just that there.
Yeah, and that is super beautiful. Something we were talking about before we were recording was this idea of big picture. And then you came up with this really great word. Do you remember it?
Uh, the micro machinations
Micro machinations, yes, which made me think
of
about nanotech.
yes, I
So
love
big world
nanotech.
building, and
Yeah.
then the tiny, micro words of nanotech, which I actually wrote down earlier when you were talking about how much you loved sci-fi. So you gave me like this great segue into talking about science, nanotech, and world building, and all of these things. I'm just curious why you love that. Now that you say you love it, and and um and how you feel about all of that, especially, and you're just telling me to just stay big picture in this world that is having these micro machinations daily.
Like
I mean,
daily.
the speed
Yes.
of which this world that we're in right now, the speed is astonishing.
Right. And so we're both polymaths, in sort of this intersection of storytelling and narrative and technology.
Mm,
And I think I could probably speak for you too, that it's hard to keep up.
hmm
It's like it's an overwhelm often. Like I was on vacation for a couple of weeks and I came back and just between reading all the entertainment feeds and then all my emerging tech and science feeds, I was like, whoa, like we need to slow our roll here. This is crazy. Sorry, my screen went crazy. Um, at the same time, and so I think that that's a big part of world building too, is that sort of as storytellers and looking at big picture, how can we create these stories and these worlds that allow the general population who isn't immersed in these sort of micro worlds to deal with uncertainty and change at this sort of exponential rate where people are either, just anti everything or stick their head in the sand or just think it doesn't apply to me because I have so many things going on in my life with my job and my kids and this and that, of course, how could they have the bandwidth to start thinking about larger ramifications of technological advancement on a daily basis? It's one of the reasons why like I do Future Film Fridays is because my brain works that way, that I love casting a wide net, figuring out what is relevant, how it kind of relates, and then sort of distributing it so that people have something that's like a palatable overview as opposed to, trying to A, find it and then B, understand it themselves without, that being their specialty. So I think storytelling is the best delivery mechanism. It is the best Trojan horse to help people understand and just grasp what's coming down the pipeline, what's coming over the horizon. It almost like conditions their nervous system for it,
Mm,
which,
so
I think
true.
that that's a big talking point right now in like mental health is people's nervous system. And they, when COVID happened, I had a friend talk to me, she's one of my best friends, and she's like, "Do you remember like 3 years ago and we were hanging out and you were like, this pandemic is going to happen and the world's going to shut down and no one's going to be ready for it, but this entity and this entity are working on it." And I was like, no, I don't remember talking about it, but yeah, I knew that something like this was coming. She's like, how
Wow.
this? Like, this is, you knew this was coming? And I'm like, I write science fiction. Like my brain goes to these scenario planning. I should probably work for the UN or the government. Like that's what I think about. I can't help it. Like I read a piece of research and the future unrolls like as in the shape of the story. That's just kind of how my brain functions for it. So, I really think that having these paths of new types of stories for people to condition us that things are going to keep changing and that climate is going to be, a huge issue. But we also are this incredibly intelligent, innovative species that have all these new innovations on the horizon that will help us change our world to be able to have to modulate how we live our life to, survive within these changes of our planet. And we just have to show that. It's not binary. It's not life or death. There have been bad things that happened before. We had myths to help take care of that before. Myths were our like narrative infrastructure. Story is infrastructure. It's how we learned as a species to understand and to deal with big challenges and changes. And we've kind of lost that connective tissue. We kind of had that axial age of the scientific enlightenment and everything became very sort of pragmatic and analytical, but we lost that kind of more nuanced emotional, spiritual connection to the larger stories that were at play. So that's what I'm
Okay. You
thinking of.
once again, you've given me way too many avenues to
Threads.
to unpack. So I'm gonna go with
Sorry.
the it's all right. No, it's fantastic. But I am gonna ask, do you think we've lost it? Because I'm a big introvert and I have been. I was completely happy during COVID. Oh, we have to stay in? What's new?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm completely happy on my own. I've always been happy on my own in my own bedroom. My mother's like, you never, I would, she's like, if I was going to punish you, I couldn't send you to your room because you were happy there.
Oh, me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
So, but do you think we've lost a connection? Because I feel like that I am connecting more deeply with people, strangely, across technology, across this moment with you than I was doing prior to being able to connect globally with, and maybe it's because I needed more global relationships. rather than local ones. And I mean, I'm a New Yorker, so it's super diverse. The
Hmm.
people I could go out is my favorite thing. You can go out and drop yourself into an incredible culture. Um, but I feel very connected to people and storytelling at this time in my life. Certainly for the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm just curious where and why you feel that way. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't see signs of desperation and, mental health anxieties, but I do find that that there are things that I knew nothing about that no one locally was talking to me about that I learned on TikTok, by making connections with strangers. Um, so I don't know if we're speaking down the same thought here, but it's
I
what
think I think we are just maybe on sort of like different levels of like a building, like different floors of a building.
mm,
'Cause I mean, I am an introvert as well. I mean, I think it's funny that we were both actors because like I've been able to play my most boldest, crazy, unlikable, or all these different like arched characters, but I
mm,
would never inhabit that in my real life.
mm,
Like
yeah,
it felt far too scary, maybe inauthentic too, but just because I never gave myself permission to be those big, bold people, I didn't like that kind of judgment. I always wanted to be liked.
mm,
So yes, when COVID hit for me, I mean, I felt very guilty about liking that I could stay home because, my husband still had a job that was, that was remote but yes, not having to hustle and sort of, because I'm always in this kind of, new avenue, doing new things, creating my own opportunities. I don't have an agent being like, "Hi, we have 4 jobs lined up for you. What
yeah,
would you like to do?" That would be nice. If anyone's out there, I'm good. I'll take it. But you know what it's like creating your own opportunities, your own frameworks, and your own new collaborations, and it's like it's exhausting. So being able to have a moment and just think and write, like I wrote a huge thought piece, the fourth act, that I never would have been able to write if it wasn't for COVID. And just sort of being hunkered down in my office, alone with. I mean, I was never bored. My God, I was working 24/7. Like all I had friends who they were like, I can't think creatively. This is too scary. And I'm like, I don't know. All your creativity is coming this way because I can't like I can't manage it all.
yeah, I feel
So yeah,
that.
I did that. And so I'm with you in that, like, I feel like in this day and age, you have incredible opportunity to create connections globally across so many different topics. I mean, that's why I am who I am today because of what Twitter
Mm,
allowed me to reach. Because my community that I was friends with was either my actor friends from class or people I'd been assistants with, who all sort of were either doing the development track or becoming moms.
mm,
And so here suddenly I'm like, no, I'm a web series, like creative science advocate. Like I suddenly became this alien entity to these 2 circles I had been a part of. And so if it wasn't for online communities, I would never have found my people.
hmm
But you can have so many communities, I believe, and still maybe not feel safe in when change is coming at you, when things are shifting so quickly.
Yes.
And I think that when people don't have shared stories that are tethers, we used to have storytelling and TV appointment, Thursday. We were both, at whatever age when we'd watch Thursday night, NBC and stuff, and Friends was on Thursdays, and then ER. And I even remember when I was like a kid and I would sneak down to watch Dallas on Friday nights, like because I wasn't allowed to, I was too young. But it was like it was those water cooler moments. It was shared narratives that we all had, and they were sort of finite. There wasn't this flood of stories and content. So where we're all like, and also this idea of like what's true now and how the truth can be
Mm,
reinterpreted so many ways. And, you know, so I think that's sort of part and parcel of people needing these touch points. And the best touch points that we can have is shared storytelling. Is like if we all have these sort of greater, bigger myths that we can turn to, and in times especially of crisis, and be like, yes, this is this shared story that gets us through to the next chapter.
yeah. I think that's really important. And I didn't, having never worked a real job other than the acting and the directing and whatever else I've put together for myself. I never had those like communities in an office. I have my film communities on set, and that's family. And I try to
Oh
explain
yeah.
that to people, you know. And everything I've ever built is built from that, that I have a responsibility to pull together these groups of people that become family. So if they're going to come and work with me in the squad, or they're going to come and work with me in engine, or they whatever, like it's it's like ride or die with me.
Hmm.
And it's very hard for people to break that with me. But I think that coming back to your Future Film Fridays, and being able to facilitate this story of what's happening because it is a deluge of information, and you and I are on the cutting edge of it, and it's a lot, and I literally am bookmarking all day long and looking for moments where I can scroll through those bookmarks and make sure that I haven't missed something. The moment right now, which has been going on for a few months, but is really consolidating, is all the multimodal agentic workflows,
Yep.
right? And I love them. Um, However, it's a lot. And so I'm testing, all the different canvases and all the different CVPs that I have access to again, once again, try to refine a workflow that works for me where I'm not like over here and over here and over here. I still am a little bit because there's just certain things that I want a different type of control over. But I want to talk to you about that as well, because you and I could stay in this very deep and profound conversation, which I think we're going to have to pick up over some vino tinto. Um,
I agree.
uh, yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about mythos. I kept calling it mythos. Um, it's the European part of me. Uh,
Yes.
and this idea of these existential and ideas that you've already been speaking about, and climate change and responsibility and the human experience. Um, what then for you, because I know what brought me into wanting to utilize these tools and tell stories with these tools. What brought you here, other than your future facing but I think that we all have a story in like the first time that we got involved in these tools, whether it was stable diffusion and like what is this? Like that's
Yep.
me in
Yeah,
2022. What is this? And why
totally.
is it important?
2000, for me, it was 2020, beginning of 2023. And I'd been tracking, all the news. I was very sort of hesitant to dive into it initially. I remember when people were on Instagram and they were using, I forget what app it was, but it was using a diffusion model to like augment people's faces into the style of like a superhero or something. But I
Hmm.
remember it wasn't like an early majority. I can't even remember what it was. But I was like, I'm not going to use that. That's been trained on like copyright art and graphic novels. I'm like, no way. I was really angry about it. But then I had to keep like tracking it and I started experimenting a bit with ChatGPT and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I started sort of making sure I was reading books and sort of understanding the history of the transformer architecture and like, trying to nerd out first. And at the same time, my partner in the STEM climate endeavor that I have called Sirens, my partner Tamara Krinsky and I had approached the Center for Science and the Imagination team that we had done a project with during COVID about doing a short film for them that was based on this climate futures anthology that they were about to release. And we pitched them basically, hey, can we do a short story that kind of celebrates the hopeful tone of this? And so we pitched them some ideas and we landed on this kind of hybrid short film, scripted narrative short film with this surreal world where the authors of the four main novellas in the book give these voiceovers and they narrate quotes basically from their short stories. And I was like, and we're going to do it in AI. And I had just done like so much VFX work for the last film had just been delivered November 2022. And so I was like, oh, I can find an artist and it can be super cheap. And we're going to like create worlds around like their short stories. The only artist I found that I knew was like going to charge me $2,000. And I was like, oh no, I don't know. We have no budget here, like literally no budget. And we're flying to Arizona ourselves to like do this out of basically the goodness of our hearts. Um, and so I just started dabbling in it. And I'm like, what is the most ethical model that I can use? And I'm like, Adobe Firefly. So I started, and I had been working in Midjourney, experimenting. I'd been using Midjourney for decks. So that's sort of where I'd first started doing my image generation was I unfortunately get way too many ideas for projects. And so I have like 10 different decks where all the images were created, in Midjourney. And I was like, how can you not use this? You're not selling this. You are basically using a tool to help what is in your brain go onto the piece of paper for somebody to look at so they can help you make it. And then you can pay people, to help you make it who are like the production designers and the artists and everything. So for me, I could justify that. When it came to like doing something that was going to be out in the world, I'm like, I need to head down more of the ethical path. So I ended up, because of our budget constraints, designing all the shots myself. And they were just image shots. And then I animated them, the 4-second animation. I think oh God, I can't even remember what I used then.
Runway?
Sorry?
Runway?
I don't know if it was early runway. I think it was something else. Pretty sure it was something else. Um, and so did that and then found this other guy who I don't know if you know who Jason Silva is. He's sort of this like Timothy Leary, does like beat poetry about like the future and tech, and he's like super cool, and I followed him forever. And he started doing these videos where he would morph into these AI worlds, and I'm like, who is his artist? So I went down this rabbit hole and then found this guy on Discord. And I don't know if I actually know his real name. I mean, I know I paid him, and he took these really lo-fi videos that we had our four authors capture themselves, like, because they were all international, India, Nairobi, and so these were really bad lo-fi videos that they were doing on their phones. And he used his like disco diffusion model and created these kind of surreal versions of them, like a video to video style transfer, with prompts in there that echoed what they were saying. And so the combination of that with these worlds I created that were showcasing the actual story worlds that they were narrating. And then I hired a student out of ASU who was working in Unreal Engine, and she created this globe for us that we were able to fly around and go to the different areas. So we created this kind of story world with all these gold connective energy lines that connected the stories, that showed how stories basically made the world turn around. And that was sort of and I loved how it ended up. And I was just so proud of it. And I was like, you know what? I had this vision in my mind, kind of like in the web series world. I was like, I'm just going to make this happen. I know in my instinct, like in my gut, that we can use these tools to execute on this vision and to make people feel something. And because I was able to make people feel something and create these really beautiful images of the future, and it was collective and it was human centric and it was beautiful and green, I was like, cool. Okay, let's figure out how this can we can expand on this.
Yeah.
And then when Adobe and I, randomly ran into one of the execs at Adobe Firefly at Artist in the Machine event back in Venice last year, and I was like, hey, I was early adopter, just letting you know, love this little climate film. I'm sure you don't get to hear climate and AI in the same sentence. Well, here it is.
Yeah.
And she ended up putting me in touch with another marketing team there that then offered me the chance to make the Mythos short film, which was a 14-page bonkers crazy short that I had written sort of as a challenge to myself. And so I had to whittle it down to 6 pages, and we only had, 4 weeks for me to crew and create, and it was live action as well. So, get a physical crew together and a green screen stage and BTS and, social cuts, and it was bonkers bananas.
How much
But
fun though?
it
How
was,
much
yeah,
fun?
it got to a point where the sleep deprivation stopped making it fun. Too old for that. But Yeah, wow. Wow. I mean, and just the community and what that opened the door to was that I've always kind of been on the fringes of communities because I'm a part of so many,
Mm,
like the climate and entertainment and then sort of traditional Hollywood and digital series and now the creative AI space. But I sort of was introduced to this most incredible AI creative community. I mean, these young filmmakers, everybody is so kind and so supportive and so giving and like hyper creative. And they're just like, and they're dealing with then all this like pushback and flack and
mm,
anger and stuff as well. So I can't say enough about them. I think that they're fantastic.
yeah,
And we need their voices. We need more people's voices in the world.
yeah,
And so this is an incredible opportunity for that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir on that one. I love how these tools unlock as resources to people who I've told this story over and over. I'm sure you've heard it now. But when I reached into my hard drive because I gave myself a challenge, I was like, okay, I see a lot of influencers putting up a lot of really cool clips, but I don't see any stories being told yet. So I can't remember. Um, I think it was end of 2023 that I ended up going into my hard drive and pulling a story that I've always wanted to tell, and one that I was never going to get funded, because it's about the colonization of the Cherokee tribe in North Carolina, and it happens to be part of my family lineage, and I'd written a story about it. But who's gonna really get? I mean, it's hard enough to get anything financed in a traditional way, and this is not necessarily a New York indie filmmaker moneymaker.
Right.
Um, so I was like, I'm gonna tell this story. And so I took my great grandfather's voice and I took another person's voice. I always say when 11 Labs let me do that. And I
Right.
and then and I married them together and I ended up with this great voice, this Native American voice that fit what I wanted. And then I did the performance underneath it.
Mhm.
Um, and I took photographs of my great grandfather and my grandmother and members of the Cherokee tribe that I knew in the Eastern Band, that I had grown up with. And then I took the story of my family, the ones that had stayed behind. That ended up being in the Eastern Band. And the Trail of Tears and what had happened. So I took that story and I was like, I want to tell the story of what actually happened because 60% of the tribe was killed on the Trail of Tears. So I was able to take a shot, and this is the story I tell all the time. And at the end of 2023, when the tools were nothing like they are now, but it was so exciting at that moment because it was 1838, and I could burn a village down in the North Carolina mountains and have a helicopter shot
Yeah.
with the American government on horseback coming in to remove the Indians. I could shoot that from my desk right here. And I thought, if I can do this to tell the story that I need to tell that no one is going to fund, then all this is costing me right now is exploration and time. And I have some knowledge being a filmmaker. I can come in here. Anyone can who has a story to tell from their lived experience. We no longer have to look to the 95% who get the opportunity to tell stories in Hollywood from their gaze. We no longer have to look at our stories through their gaze,
Mhm.
right? I mean, this is 95% of the stories that come out of Hollywood or are white male directors. And and I don't want to always hear their stories, or a story about a different culture through their eyes. I want to hear a
Yeah.
story about a culture, through the lived experience of that culture. And that's what I get. You can tell I'm starting to get really super excited. That's what excites me about these tools, the democratization of stories that I think are going to remove so much
Hmm.
us and them, because now we can experience things on a screen and stories and cultures in a way that we may not have because it got whitewashed or
Yep.
whatever washed. Um, and now, like, we can understand one another and see like the thread of humanity. it doesn't matter if you're white or black or Muslim or Hindu or Christian. If you're, typically a mother cares about what happens to their child. The same wants and needs and pains and joys are exist in our humanity, regardless of culture. And I think we forget that,
Hmm.
um, because we only see a certain type of stories.
That was beautiful. Yeah, global. So it's cinema is a global language, which is so powerful. That's been one of the big sort of rallying cries that I've had too, is this democratization of the tools, because I've been firsthand here for over 2 decades of seeing the gatekeepers
Mm-hmm.
and also knowing who some of those gatekeepers are. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you should not be in charge of culture because the stories that influence culture, and then culture influences the Overton window, which then shifts public perception and then shifts policy. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a trail to this actual systemic changes that we need from the stories that we share. So really the question comes down to distribution and discovery, which is part of what you're doing as well. It's like, so we can have this flood of new stories from across the globe told in different ways. And that was one of the things I loved about Mythos, was that the story was told partly through the point of view of a whale.
Yes.
And so and that was inspired by my science nerdiness of like having been in an event where SETI, which is not search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but a whale ocean institute that David Gruber heads up. I was at an event where they showed this footage of both sperm whale clicks and how this AI had decoded it into certain phrases and vowels that were similar to human language. And then it also showed the video of the sperm whale baby that had been sort of lifted up by the pod for over 2 hours before it was able to swim on its own. And nobody had ever seen that before. And nobody had seen this cross family community that came together, to lift this baby up to survive over the ocean for 2 hours, and that dolphins were there too. And I was like, how can you not cry? It was like, I watched this video probably, once it was released, maybe 3 months later to the public. It was just, incredible. But, non-human species, how do we engender through these tools stories that don't put humans as the apex exceptional, species on this planet? Because the only way
Mm,
that we're going to really thrive is by, taking that hierarchy down again and
mm,
finding the intelligence. And that's one of the things I love about all my science feeds, is that more often than not, this technology has been developed because they have noticed something in nature and they've
mm.
tried to mimic it. And nature has been evolving for, billions of years. And so, we are here just a little speck of time. So to give reverence to that, I think is really powerful, and storytelling and art can do that. Now we can, as I love what Eliza McNitt says, like taking the camera somewhere like where it's never been before, in the feet next to a fetus in a belly in her Ancestor movie. Like I love that. That's what we need to be doing, not replicating what we've seen so many times. Yes, that's a good exploration and that's a good test. But we need to be using these tools to change what storytelling is, to evolve it to like this next level, and to the experiential that we, I think, need to feel. We can't just be these passive audience members anymore scrolling, because it's not going to impact any change or really any health.
I think that this brings us back to really the beginning of our conversation, which is, um, well, we've touched on it many times, which is the importance of storytelling to community and the importance of getting back to your water cooler, to shared experiences, and also I think that something that I think I was trying to say that you said so much more eloquently is, um, that we need to to evolve our storytelling so that we're not hearing the same tropes over and over, and it's the same narrative, because the narrative is not the same for everyone. The
Hmm.
narrative is not at all. But if our media continues to feed us the same narrative because they have control of the resources, and I think I wrote a piece, "The Gatekeeping Was the Point." I can't remember if that was the name of my piece or
Oh,
not,
yeah,
but
I've
it's
read
one of
that.
my Substack pieces. The gatekeeping, yeah, I think is what it's called. Um, is the idea that this is the story, this is how you're supposed to be, this is normal, not normal. I mean, I've sort of faced that my entire life, being queer, and not normal. Um, and I'm, what is
Like, what
normal?
is normal? What is we
Normal for
all, I
you?
mean, like, do you want to get into the neuroscience of like what actual lived perception means and what normal non-typical is? We're all
Yeah,
neuro non-typical. It's just what is like,
completely,
oh my gosh.
completely. These are no, again, I think you and I are severely overdue, even though this is our first conversation, severely overdue for some Vino Tinto and some long conversations. What I love is that I love that we're having this conversation on the Film 3 OG, and around the AI tech, because it's not about defending anymore. It really is about, look at all the storytelling that is going to get unlocked. Look at all the ways we as humanity can connect. And also, if you want to be a part of the conversation, you have to be a part of the development of what is happening. Whether it's using the storytelling models or any other of the machine learning models. If you don't like what's happening, you have to get, this is what I said when I spoke at Cannes this year, you have to get involved,
Yep.
right? So you can help shape that future.
And I say that to people in the climate space too. I'm like, listen, you can't remove yourself from this. I'm like, we need friction to create the best version of AI systems that are working in concert and in collaboration, with entertainment. We need pushback.
Mhm.
We can't just have all cheerleaders, and we
Mm.
can't just have all haters that are turning their back or throwing bombs at it. We need this constructive conversation to be able to be shaping it, because it needs to be human centric. We need to have standards. We need to have control and protections, and we can't rely on the big tech industries that are just looking to justify their billions and billions of investment, to their shareholders. So our best interest is not in their best interest. They want to keep their share price up. So we need to be coming together across all different modalities and perspectives, when it comes to AI. I do love what the Creative Coalition is trying to do. I have to dig now that I'm back from my trip. I want to dig in and see sort of, they're really working in policy and working across, different industries to see how we can, add more protection there.
Hmm. I would love to take the last couple minutes for you to tell people where they can find you, because I think we'll end up with a part two at some point, bringing you
I love
back
that.
and keep digging in my next season. But where can people find you right now if they want to follow you and all of that?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to launch my Substack this week.
Nice. Well done.
Yes. So I mean, I've had so many different platforms that I've been on, but with leaving Twitter, mostly leaving Twitter and Tumblr, of course, that was years and eons ago. I have some of my most sort of longer form essays on Medium, and then I'm on LinkedIn right now. Definitely you can find me on LinkedIn. But I figure that Substack will be just a great place for me to both host Future Film Fridays and then have an additional place to put my bigger thought pieces, smaller essays. I'm going to start adding some video content because I used to sort of differentiate, oh, me as a futurist, me as a filmmaker. It is the same thing now.
Yeah.
And I just want to give service to that, and sort of all these different hats that I've worn have all sort of merged into one.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be called something, but Taryn O'Neill, and my name is my social media handle everywhere. Since I was early on, I got to capture that.
Yeah. Well, great. It has been such a delight. to have you on here.
Thank
And
you, Jordan. This time flew by. Like we had
it,
such a fun conversation.
no,
Literally, it flew.
it completely flew by. And now I'm gonna go try to unpack some of the things you said privately in my brain.